Welcome, welcome, welcome. Here we are in another live stream for Chinese medicine. So I hope that you are doing well, and we are going to answer your questions today. So I'm going to answer the live questions that come through. We might start with some other questions from the channel firstly. Been some nice comments this week. Someone commented, "You're rambling." On a different video, on an older video I had, and that's probably true. So thank you for pointing that out. That did happen, or it probably still happens now, but it did happen more in my older videos that I used to do. You've got to start somewhere, and I'm a learn by doing person. So I hope you are having a great evening or day, whatever it is for you. And yeah, we're going to talk all things Chinese medicine. I don't really have a lot prepared to start this thing because it's a late morning start for me. And I just thought I will start the stream without further ado. So I'm just looking on the other side of the YouTube to find questions from previous that I have not answered. And we can go with those ones. Yeah. Oh, maybe we'll go by the responded ones. There might have been some. Let's have a look here. Yeah, there was something about on the end of the other chat. This person may come into the chat today, so that'll be good, about a course, and maybe they were asking about my course, or they were asking about learning any kind of Chinese medicine course, and that was Jackie, so maybe she'll pop back in today. I think that might have been when I was mentioning excuse me, when I was just turning into Darth Vader then I was mentioning my course. That is for people that are just lay people, I guess, or I don't like that word, but I still use it. I don't know why I do, but oh my goodness, my phone is going to die. Put it on the charger. That horrible feeling when you see 5% battery. I just was looking at it to turn it onto silent, so it wasn't going to ring while we do this. All right, so people who are here, welcome the viewers that are here now. Please put a question into the chat so that we can get things started, and I'll get it started on your question. Otherwise, I've got a few here that I will get to from the channel. Yeah, it's already March, so that is like the year is just chuffing away, and we've had Chinese New Year gone now, or I don't know if it's still on, but so the remnants of it are there. So it's truly into the new year, right? And if you're in the US or UK, it'll be coming into summertime now. So this is not coming into, but you're coming into spring, which gets into summer. So you're coming into the more vibrant part of the year. Whereas in Australia, it's still, because it's still pretty hot and stuff, it still stays pretty vibrant until really May, I would say, like weather-wise. And that's the momentum of the seasons. I've put the 5 elements up there because we like to observe those in Chinese medicine. And the summer season is the fire season, the winter season is the water season. So that's healthy. Health is to follow those seasons and to do what's right in each season. So talk a lot about that, in various videos about how to stay healthy and keep healthy along on those ways. So please feel free to pop a question in. It can be a random question. Say hi, let me know where you're from. These streams are meant to be a bit of back and forward, a bit of Q&A, bit of I will do my best to answer, but you might have an answer. Maybe you've got an answer rather than a question. Hi Taurus, nice to see you again. You are a staple on this channel now. You're a I don't know what to say, high level supporter. As those other YouTubers do. You know how they give people little names? They're like, oh, you're a super Patreon, you're a super duper super chatter, you're a this and that, like whatever. I am rambling now because I'm looking for a question that I can answer. You missed me. Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad to be missed. I have been away a little bit this year. I was away in the US. Journeyman, awesome. It must be 10 p.m. there for you, or close near that. Yeah, I was away in Brisbane. It seems like ages ago now, but it wasn't that long ago. It was about 3 weeks ago, I think. 9 p.m. Okay, we've got a super chat. That's nice. Thank you. Let me just put this. Let me just grab this. I don't know what that is. 5,000 W's. That seems like a lot of money. I'm not laughing at that. I'm just like, I don't know, some kind of currency. It's what's cool about YouTube is they have all these things. Anyway, I'm going to put that on the screen in a sec. Oh, who said I'm on your motivation? Taurus. Okay, well, I hope that's grateful to be someone's motivation. Who's going to motivate me? That's what my little niece said. Like I said, I put her to bed one time. This was a little while ago. She was probably about 3.5 years old when I said this. And she has all these little unicorns on her bed, on the mattress, on the sheets, you know. And they don't want to go to bed. No kids. I remember being a kid as well, like not wanting to go to bed. That was the worst thing ever. Like, why would you want to go to bed? You don't want to miss out on the things of life, right? And I'm like, go to bed, like, go, you know, you're trying to coax them. How can I coax? Because I was looking after them. The parents were out. I was the babysitter. And you're sort of thinking of all these ways, or how can I coax you to go to bed? Like, you know, almost like, let me trick you into going to bed somehow, you know, like where you trick them and you say, just lie down and close your eyes and see if you can't fall asleep. You know, and then next thing you know, they're asleep. Anyway, she's like, I need someone. She was going through this phase where she wanted someone to lie down with her and pat her to sleep, like literally pat her to sleep every night. And I think her parents had told me that, and I was like, I'm not gonna lie there and pat you to sleep for hours, like, because she takes a long time. At that point was taking a while to go to sleep, and I said, you know, you need to go in the bed and give your unicorns a hug. They need to be hugged, you know. Like she was going through this phase of like wanting to be hugged and stuff, and I was like, go in there and hug your unicorns and pat them to sleep. And she was like, but who's gonna pat me to sleep? Like, who's gonna hug me if I'm hugging the unicorns? I was like, yeah, isn't that life? Isn't that becoming a bit of an adult there? All right, let me get this question here before we. I'll do my best to answer this. I don't know if I have the answers. Just give that caveat. I don't have any. You know, it's like when you come to the Wizard of Oz and then they're just like, nah, we got nothing for you. So this is a question for someone's got eczema. Also, I need to just let people know, look, I can't give individual medical advice to people. I think you know that these are theoretical ideas of like how Chinese medicine would look at things. You know, rather than like, I'm not claiming to be your doctor or your practitioner or something like that. So Grey Skies 92 says, hi Marie, I've got eczema, and I'm a metal element. If I'm more damp heat, do I eat cooler foods? Metal and heat contradict each other. Maybe I'll put this question below, and so we can still see the little elements there. That's a great question, and yeah, so part of the conundrum with these things when you've got something like wrong with you, from like a thermal perspective, let's put it like that, you often think, well, I need the opposite thermal thing to contradict that, counteract that thing. And that's not necessarily always the case. So we have to think about, well, what is our body's innate nature? What does it want, right? And this is also a big difference between TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, and the more fundamental way of thinking, which is the classical way of thinking of Chinese medicine. So they do think a little bit differently about this heat, but they do have the idea of damp heat, and they do have an idea that heat could come in from the environment. And in that case, if it's acute kind of heat coming in from the environment, yeah, you can eat cooler foods and you can counteract that with coolness. Like cooler medicines are often used, that kind of thing, to treat it. But when something's been going on for a while, it's no longer that acute thing. It's actually like a reaction in your body, and all that heat flaring is actually your own body's yang flaring out to the surface. It's not some erroneous heat from the environment, or erroneous is probably not the right word, but this like mystical heat, like ethereal was probably the better word, a heat from the environment, like coming into you. At that, when something's been going on for a long time, like that heat that's happening is actually your body's yang, and in a way, we don't want to necessarily cool that away. In some cases, right, we want to not that every person is using warming things with Chinese medicine in the classical kind of system, but a lot there's a lot more warming than cooling. Let me just put that down. Let me just say that. So you have to be careful if you eat a lot of cooling foods, because what is that cooling? It's going to cool down your digestive system too much, and it doesn't want to be cold. It doesn't want it. That's not its innate nature. So the idea is that you want to go along with what your body would naturally want, and then it's going to rectify the rest of what's wrong. Now that sounds too good to be true, and in some cases it's a great theoretical concept, but definitely food wise is where you shouldn't be bombarding your body with cold foods just to treat that heat. I would try to eat warm, cooked and moist, not hot, not really super hot things. But think about this example, right? A lot of things we would consider hot actually can cool you down. Now, how does that work? This is going to sound a bit of a, oh, here we go. If you eat pungent food that makes you sweat, pungent food being things like cinnamon or garlic or ginger or chili, and often it's a necessary combination of those things. So in classical Chinese medicine, or just the original formulas that were written out, documented formulas, you'll see like units of pungent foods being used. So some formulas might have, cinnamon only, and some formulas would have cinnamon and ginger, and a double dose of one of those things, to increase its effect of doing that pungency, which is why would we want to do that? Because that person needed to break open their skin and sweat it out. Again, this is really hard to know what to do if you don't have a proper diagnosis, because these are the things where in the original textbook we follow the Shang Han Law, and there's a lot of caution that a person was sweated wrongly or purged wrongly. So those two things mean that they were given herbs that made them have a sweat, or a treatment that made them sweat. In the Han Dynasty, they used to use a lot of this sort of fire needling, which is like, heating up an acupuncture needle, and probably more into do 14 in the back, right, into certain acupuncture points that sort of shock you, and like because it's hot, and you bust open a sweat and you sweat that way, and that treatment does have a use, but it's not really meant to be used for that kind of thing. So sometimes with conditions like skin conditions, there can be a trappedness of the skin, and the heat that your body's like generating can't get out properly, and so then it gets all red and itchy and irritated on the skin surface. So that's one possibility, right? With what are we talking about here? That's one possibility with the treatment of this, right? Another, so like that opening the skin to make you sweat, like that, if you don't need that, it can be really dangerous, and then you could be sweating too much, or you could make yourself weaker. So that it's really like the method that you need to use is really what a practitioner is probably going to be able to tell you, and they're only really going to know that through a more thorough diagnosis. But those are options. Those are methods of treatment, right? This idea where you've got lots of heat and I'm going to eat a lot of cold foods, it may be worse for you actually. Like eating a lot of cucumbers and cooling things, because you're not necessarily cooling the skin down, you're cooling the stomach and the intestines down. And then they're not really in an optimal position to extract the nutrients and do all that sort of, do their job, right? That's probably not what you want to hear, the answer, because it'd be easy to say, yeah, eat some cucumbers and your eczema will reduce. Like that's probably not, it's probably a bit more palatable. So if there's a follow-up question to that, that's fine. You can ask that. So the thing here is metal and heat contradict each other. So, people with these personality types of things can end up with a tendency to, like, you use your constitutional type, you can have a tendency to get things towards that, of that type. So the metal element relates to the lungs, and the lungs relate to the skin. And so that can be why your body has that weakness, like, to flare its skin. So really what you want to do, if you look at this little 5-element thing that I've got here on the screen somewhere, I think it must be there. Let me see if I can point to it properly. Yeah, it must be here. What generates metal is earth, right? So you actually want your metal to be stronger so that it's able to repair the skin. And that's where I don't think that's the proper answer of why you don't want to eat a lot of cold foods, because the way to make your earth stronger is not through lots of cold foods. So if you are in winter, certainly don't have a lot of cold foods, okay? So you want to have warm, cooked and moist foods most of the time. If you've got, you may notice with these things that there's a correlation between certain foods and your skin flaring up. So obviously avoid those things. That's not a good thing to sort of bombard your body with stuff that's going to irritate it more. And the Chinese have this diet called the Qing Dan diet, right? So it's called the clear bland diet, which is really it's a very, I was going to say boring diet, but it's just reducing all of the flavors that can kind of flare things in a way, like all the fluff of the potentially of the diet. So ancient times it would have been things like congee, like a clear kind of a congee, with little bits of food added into that, or maybe just like a meat, without too much flavors. So you don't want things like, if you're in a Chinese kind of diet, you wouldn't want heavy sauces and condiments and flavors and stuff like that. And in a Western sort of diet, that I'll write that down. It's just something to look into. There's different ways of kind of doing that, but this Qing Dan diet is like really just keeping things simple. And in a Western sense, we can kind of achieve something like that, where we do things like just reduce all the flavors and all the packets, and if you're cooking everything yourself, and then you go to sort of like maybe just plain meat and veg, and some carbohydrates that are things you cook, so rice or quinoa or grains and that kind of stuff, but not processed grains into breads and things like that. And you go on to that for a little while and see how you feel, right? So it's almost like an elimination kind of thing. But that sort of diet supports the spleen and stomach. So yeah, earth element foods are things like orange, squashes. I think they call them in America squashes, and pumpkin, parsnip, turnip, things that are grown below the ground, as well as like your hardier sort of vegetables. Not potato. I don't think potato is really a good vegetable to eat, for a few different reasons, especially if you're eating potato in things like chippies and stuff like that. Don't have it like that. And like in general, meats will I love microwaved carrots, he says in there. So carrots are one of those foods because it's orange. It tends to have that affinity. So I've put the earth here in this circle as yellow, but it's like that orangey yellow kind of colour. So that we do have foods that have those affinities to those things. So when you're doing diet therapies type of things on yourself, one is you've got the time to, especially if you've got a chronic thing that's not really shifting much and you're not doing many other therapies at the time, you could just try one strategy with your diet and see what happens. And you'd need to give it a couple of weeks usually for something for you to notice what's happening. If you have a cycle with something, so this is more generic, not just for someone with their skin, but someone with anything happening. If there's some sort of cyclic arrangement with that thing that you've noticed, like, every 3 weeks it flares worse, or every time I have a headache I get this thing, or every time I get stressed it happens, or if I have a few nights of bad sleep it flares, or whatever that kind of scenario is. You need to allow sufficient time to go through that phase of it to know whether the thing you're doing is working or not, if that makes sense. For women, if your scenario is related in any way to your menstrual cycle, it might not be a cycle related thing directly, but a lot of the time it can be there can be some kind of hormonal influence that's flaring it, like it's always there but it's worse at this one time or something like that. So you kind of need to allow that sufficient time. And along the way, when you're doing something, if you experience worse symptoms, like let's say you start eating you start nourishing your earth more and you start eating more warm, cooked and moist, and stop having, cold foods, and focus on onto the earth to strengthen that earth. And then within a few days you get horrible diarrhea, and the next day that just doesn't stop. You just have to stop that diet. Like, don't just endure worsening symptoms. I always would encourage people to do this under the care of a practitioner, because they're going to be able to guide you as to what to do, what's best to do along the way. So what I'm saying is, don't just force yourself to endure certain symptoms unless you've been told. Like, if you do a ketogenic diet, for instance, there's going to be a transition period, and that's a known thing with that kind of diet. So you might need to work that out, so you don't just sort of stop it. I've got this diarrhea and it's only like a couple of days and it's gone, and then you feel heaps better. That's common with a ketogenic kind of diet. So what I'm saying is, you need to pick something and give it sufficient time to see how you feel. And you can even keep like a little food diary. Or sometimes I'll tell my patients to put something on the fridge, and it will just say, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then you just sort of either rate your pain or the condition or something like that. So Grace Guys says, I had a bit of kale and pepper, I think you mean. Kale and, yeah. I know what you mean, but now that I've read your thing, I can't pronounce it properly. Chili powder last night, because I was reading into foods that were good for the metal element, which is spicy, and I itched bad. Yeah. So it's perhaps too, like, it's very hot. It's hot and spicy, not sort of warm and spicy. And these kind of things, can sometimes reading into foods that were good for the metal. So why are those pungent foods good for metal? Because it opens and it disperses. So like, pungent foods help you sweat, and that's cayenne pepper, it's called. I think that's, or Carolina Reaper chili powder. Maybe that's not maybe that's not cayenne pepper, but it's the same idea, right? This chili. So you're either going to open the pores and make you sweat, or you're going to close the pores and keep them closed, and that's the sour. So pungent and sour kind of both act on the metal in two different ways, right? One's opening the pores and making everything move out, and the other one's closing the pores and keeping everything kind of in and consolidating it. So you like, in a general sense with diet, you kind of usually have a balance of stuff, right? You don't have an excessive amount of something all the time. I mean, some people do, I guess, because they just love spicy food. But that the detriment of too much spicy food is that you're going to sweat a lot, and then when you sweat a lot, I'm talking about really hot spicy food, that sweating a lot is going to deplete you because you're wasting fluids on sweating all the time. So yeah, I hope I've answered that question. If anyone else has another question, or you have a follow up to that, where you can sort of ask that. If people have a different kind of question, or maybe a what would we call it, a comment about that, that's fine. Yeah, sometimes these things are, like, I have to really think about them too. It's not like I just know the answer. I have to think, okay, well, if you did that, what would happen? What would, so it's not like, and you can puzzle that out as well for yourself if you kind of, the more you understand about the elements and what to do. So, yeah. You don't have to keep doing super chats either. You can just put the comments in there. That's fine. What is better for metal, right? Metal or earth food? So, I'm not sure what you mean by metal and earth foods, because maybe you've like I don't have a like, is there a text that you're using to get these ideas of these foods or some kind of thing? Yeah, I know. Thank you. You're very kind. If there's a text that you're using to get these, where you're getting these metal foods or earth foods, because there's a lot of different sources with Chinese dietetics, but what they mean by that. So if you want to strengthen metal, okay, like that's obviously what you want to do because you want your skin to be better. You need earth to be strong so that it generates metal. So that's the first place I would start. Why would you start with that? Because that is the center of the digestion as well as that is your digestive system, and it's the easiest. Everything you eat is going to have to pass through that anyway. So eating, like as in eating foods that are healthy for, like eating a diet that supports the earth's function. So it's not so much that you have to eat earth foods, it's that you don't want to have cold, dry and raw. Your stomach. So I've got a video on this channel called Why Eat Mostly Cooked Foods. And then there's a couple of videos to almost like a follow-up on what's healthy for the spleen chi in 2020 or something like that. Those videos will kind of have things that help support it. And even some of the videos I've done about dampness, that's really about supporting the earth element, right? Which is supporting your digestion. So what does it like? It likes warm, cooked and moist, and it doesn't like cold, dry and raw. So that's a kind of an earth diet. Is in the wintertime, you really avoid the raw. In the summer, you can have a bit of raw. You could have a bit of fruit. You could have a bit of fresher foods. But if your earth element, well, let's say this, if the weaker the earth element is, the more it's affected by raw. So if someone has a really strong, robust earth element, and you see this with kids, right? They can eat, not talking about babies, but, maybe once their spleen stomach's matured, if they've grown up healthy, maybe they're, 10 years old. They could eat a bucket full of fruit and they will get probably diarrhea from that fruit, but they'll eat, they can eat a lot of these sort of raw things without that much. It's not necessarily good for them, but that much detriment, because you've got robust and strong earth energy. Whereas if you eat a piece of raw fruit and you get diarrhea from that, or you get, you feel uncomfortable from that, that's more of a sign that, hey, your digestive system's struggling with that thing. So you can build up the strength of it by having more warm, cooked and moist. And within that, those earth type of foods tend to be most of the grains and most of the root vegetables, like I mentioned before. And you also need protein. You also need meats, right? Because they provide the yang to to that diet because they were foods that were alive, right? So it doesn't it could be like the almost the number one tonic food in Chinese medicine is chicken soup, right? You look at every longevity book and like recipes for convalescence and things like that. The number one food they're telling people to have is chicken soup. And this is like a bone broth type of soup, right? Where you're boiling, you're brewing the chicken with, sometimes with potentially with herbs in there. And that is providing warmth and yang. So it doesn't have to necessarily be chicken. It can be all kinds of meats. You bought duck online earlier. Yum. Yeah. So, all kinds of animal products have that core building quality for building the substance. I mean, that's what they do there. If proteins can build your muscle, they can build you. Yin yang ho. Yin yang ho, a good herb for health. We will get to that in a sec. That's a good question. Yin yang ho is not a herb I use in the clinic anymore because it's not in part of, it's an older herb. Oh, I do have this here somewhere. I have it in the corner because I had to buy it for making an external thing for someone. Horny goatweed, is that what it is? Is that what it's called? I'm just looking up. It's looking it up. So it's like a anyway. I'll get this thing off here, so we can answer this question. Yeah, so hopefully that answers your question, Grey Skies, about metal and earth food. So I would firstly start with tonifying earth to generate metal. And then the other thing is sometimes fire can be attacking metal, right? So fire should control metal. So I'm using my mouse here, but I know you can't see it. So you can see fire there. It can come so wood controls earth controls water, water controls fire controls metal, right? And metal controls wood. So if it can be sort of fire controlling onto metal, which is why sometimes with your skin it's going red, right? With eczema, that's kind of the fire element onto the metal, coming onto the metal. So that can sometimes be the stress component of things, right? So or the lack of sleep and stuff like that. And sort of addressing that kind of thing. Yeah. I'll just follow up this one question with this on this same thing. So earth element foods is not necessarily good for the metal element. It's only good because it's warming, which should be a guideline. Well, of course it's good for the metal element because you can't have earth without metal. Like earth generates metal. Where does metal come from? So if your metal is weak for you, it probably is if you're getting eczema all the time. Then we need to build metal. We need to make metal stronger. And so you use earth to generate, if earth is strong, it can give birth to the metal, right? So it can, that's kind of how it works. And in one sequence of the 5 elements, the earth is in the center and everything gets its nourishment from that. And that's sort of important. So going back to the original question where you said, should I eat cold foods or cooler foods? Those things should really be done in a very short time frame if we're going to be using those things, right? So if you've got acute inflammation, so you wake up and your leg is swollen and it's really infected and it's I don't know, you got bitten by something, those cooling things can be used for a few days. And even with herbal medicine, right, they're used swiftly, they're used quickly, but not every day in the diet forever. It's like taking antibiotics over and over and over all the time, but just obviously a much lesser detriment, right? Antibiotics are cold. So if you take antibiotics, you want to take the proper dose of it, proper course of it, get it over and done with, and then you deal with the detriment of having taken those cold things on your gut later on. Well, it's the same with these foods, right? If you're using foods, if you've got lots of heat, you sort of do something to get rid of that heat. It might be a purging method. It might be something that made you have a lot of diarrhea and you purge that heat out swiftly. I'm not saying that's what you would do in this scenario. And then you get on with you always go back to that warm, cooked and moist kind of diet, right? So, and so yes, to answer this follow-up thing, yes, it should be, it should be a general dietary guideline, right? As in, yes, everyone will benefit from doing that. Yes, that's the right kind of diet for a human being to have. And we just should be careful with having a lot of cooling stuff, all this, in chronic conditions. Yeah. Now, I'm only assuming this is chronic, like you haven't said that it is or isn't. But if something has been there for a few weeks, that can sort of, like, now that's becoming kind of a chronic thing. All right. Let's get rid of that. So we'll just have the next question. That was a great question. Good. All right, so this is one about yin yang ho, just a herb thing. I will just sort of talk a little bit about this. So there are some herbs that are just sort of known for. Okay, so every Chinese herb is categorized into categories, what they do. And they have properties, they have actions, they have indications and stuff like that, right? So yin yang ho is in the yang tonic category. It's not something that I use in my clinic as a yang tonic because it's just not in any older formulas. It was more added in as a modern thing. You also have to look at the structure of herbs. This is a leaf, which is going to be less powerful than a root in terms of where things are growing in the ground. Sort of that's called doctrine of signatures. That kind of informs us as to what things can do in our body, like where they will go and what they will do. So just like we were talking about with foods with the earth, things that are growing underground tend to have that affinity for that earth. They tend to generate that strength. So roots in yang tonics that are roots are a bit more powerful probably than leaf ones. But this is also, has a lot of use in TCM. Like it's in a lot of formulas. So I don't have any experience with using it because I really have. I want to say I've almost never. It's not like I've never used it, but I very rarely have used it. Before I did classical Chinese medicine, I did TCM herbal medicine, but I didn't practice it very much. I mostly did acupuncture in those days because I just wasn't really confident with herbs, with what I knew from TCM, and I just never really used it very much. So I don't have much to say about this, but it has got quite a bit of. I know there's some research on it, and I know it's one of those herbs that people sort of flock to sometimes. Like it becomes a bit of a super herb. Something to remember with Chinese medicine is that we never use one herb. Or it's very rare to use one herb by itself. So they have to be in a formula. And what that means is one herb's doing this and another herb's doing that. And that synergistic effect either stops side effects from that one herb or enhances the effect of that other herb. And often there's not just two, there's 6, 8, 12. They're common amounts of herbs to be in a formula. You can have more than that. Modern Chinese medicine often has like 50, 60 herbs in a prescription. So it's not really a formula. That's like someone's used a formula and then added different things into it. So it's like a recipe. So think about Chinese medicine as like a recipe. And that's probably a good analogy. You don't just fucking eat flour. Like, what the hell? Like, no one goes and says, wow, those cakes taste so yummy. Let me get a bucket of flour and just have that. That's the best part of the thing anyway. Or just let me have that butter. Wow, so good. Like just butter by itself. I mean, it actually is nice, but that's another thing. Or the sugar, right? The sugar by itself. Yes, some of those things can be eaten by themselves, but in the recipe, that doesn't make a cake. And like that's kind of what Chinese medicine's like. It's a recipe for something, and that cake has a purpose. That cake does different things, right? Like it doesn't, it has to be cooked a certain way even to make it into a cake. Like you don't just eat the raw cake mixture and say, well, I had a cake. I pretty much just ate the ingredients, and that's what you're getting. That's a great idea. I'm going to make that into another video. That's pretty much what you're getting sometimes when you buy over-the-counter medicines that are meant to be boiled up, right? So you've got herbs like this that are meant to be boiled, and that is the recipe, and then you grind them into a powder and put a small amount into a little pill or capsule and sell it over the counter as a convenient thing. It's not the same thing. It's like eating the cake mixture. Anyway, so that was my rant over. So I would be very careful about buying individual herbs because that's not the point. Yin Yang Ho was never meant to be used as a one-off herb by itself, and you're going to have unwanted detriments, side effects, than having it in formulas that how it was intended to be used, right? All right, we've got a couple other questions here. Asthma, what food is good for? What food is good for asthma? Let me have a little think about that. Angie Hoff says, thank you for your videos. I just found your channel today. I've been diagnosed with adenomyosis, uterine fibroids, and ovarian cyst. I'm learning that I likely have cool dampness. I'm sorry to hear that you've got all those diagnoses. That's not great. We can have a talk about some of that stuff in a sec. Let's just talk about the asthma one. We'll put that on there first. So, this is kind of almost a follow-up. Oh, oops, I've put the wrong thing there. What have we done there? Follow-up almost to the other question, because we're talking about how to strengthen metal, right? And that's the same idea. So, you can, with asthma, you have a weakness of the metal element in a way that every time something happens in the environment, you're affected by it, right? And it could be even stress, right? Or your lungs are particularly affected by stuff that happens in the environment, and what do you call it, the pollens or stress or smoke or whatever like that. And some people have asthma attacks, or some people just have constantly difficulty breathing all the time, and they will get attacks as well. So we want to strengthen the lungs. You want to make the lung energy stronger. So really the best flavor for that is sour flavor. So one of the herbs in Chinese medicine, I'm not suggesting you use this a lot by itself, but you can make a tea out of this herb, and it is a herb you can get. It's called Wu Wei Zi. It might be here on the shelf somewhere. Right here. So it's actually quite an expensive herb because it's used for like this, I don't know, these biohacky people use it for different things. I think Schisandra berries it's called. I mean, that's not the only reason it's expensive, but it's and these, like sometimes I give these to my, the lid gets stuck to my, it smells so strong because it's very berry. Like sometimes I give these to my niece or nephew when they come over and to taste one, because they're like a sour warhead. Like if you ever remember those warhead lollies, where you're like, oh, so sour, right? Now, that's the thing to think about with sour. It makes you squinch up, and it squinches, it contains everything. So this may not be what you need at the time of having it is we do use this in cough types of formulas, but sometimes you need a combination of herbs together to actually treat that. But lemon is also a food that's sour, so lemon juice in the morning, and those things tend to strengthen the metal, right? That sour flavor. So that's the first thing I'd mention. The second one is, yes, all that stuff we were talking about before about earth, make earth strong so that it can then generate the metal. So it can because we have to ask, well, why is metal weak? Why is it not strong, right? And it might be strong, it might be weak because fire is like invading it all the time. Fire is kind of attacking the metal, and that's not great. or the earth is too weak to sort of generate the metal. So by doing things that would strengthen the earth, eating a healthy, warm cooked and moist kind of diet, eating regular meals, that can kind of help. The directly strengthening metal could be the breathing exercises themselves, like doing things like that. Another point that could be used is like the stomach 36 point. That is a point to strengthen earth, and that's why it has that effect to strengthen your immunity, because earth generates metal. So it's known as a point to strengthen your immunity, and it's also a good point to use it at the change of seasons. So I know that you are, pretty sure you just said you're in the US, right? No, that was someone else, but I think you are over there. But if you're in Australia, you're coming into the time where winter is eventually going to be coming soon, and winter's coming sooner for us than everyone else. So this is a good time to start to strengthen that metal through using that stomach 36. So you can go to a practitioner and have them do acupuncture treatments on you. Moxa treatments is good on that, or you can just press that point every day. You sort of use the bird pecking kind of method like that on that point, which is on your knee. You can look that point up. I'll put it in the chat. And then lung channels type of things. You can also just directly massage the lung channel. I'm just going to make this a bit smaller here so it's out of the way. And then let me do it on this side. Your lung channel's kind of here at the top, and then it goes down. If I put my arm like this, down this way. So you can massage here like this, right? The hitting method, you can rub down there, and you don't have to exactly be on the exact spot, but we just down this way. So we just can go like this with massaging it. You can do the tapping, so an open fist, not a closed fist, open, like there's a bit of space in between here so that it's got that tapping lighter feel. You can do that. You can rub like this down there. Yeah. So I do have to finish about 11 in about 15 minutes today, because I do have some patients. Even though it's a public holiday today, I didn't realise that when I let patients book in, which is fine. I don't care. I'm just working as normal. So I do have patients this afternoon that I need to clear out all the recording gear out of this room. In a minute, in a little while. So I'll take a couple more questions and then we'll finish. I have to be finished by 11:30 at the which is half an hour from now, basically at the maximum. Amarin says, thank you, awesome. Is vinegar also the same as lemon? Vinegar. So vinegar is a sour thing. I don't know whether you should be drinking. It's definitely used in herbal medicine preparation for things, right? To have an effect. It does have that astringing kind of effect. So people use things like apple cider vinegar. I think it's just more palatable than just regular vinegar. And that's probably the same idea. It's just not a thing in Chinese medicine. I used to have a little article. Let me see if I can find it. There used to be this really cool little thing. I'm just going to see if I can find it, the link to it. And I'll put it in the chat. No, it's not here anymore. It's really strange. There's a practitioner that used to write a lot of stuff for Chinese medicine. people. He's obviously retired now. He's done a lot of work for Chinese medicine, Bob Floors. But he used to have a lot of these little articles about uses of different things. And he used to have this article called 100 Uses of Vinegar in Chinese Medicine. And I cannot find... I'm pretty sure I remember I've got these things printed out somewhere because, they used to be on the internet and then they just all... he just deleted his website, I think, like all these articles that were there for free, which was awesome. He's also written a lot of books. I've got heaps of his books. And he's a very good author for people to just learn Chinese medicine from not understanding it at all, like explaining it, and sort of showing how to. I don't think I can find this, which is a bummer. Anyway. It's been a while since I've tried to look for the article. So we won't keep looking for it. But I remember him having all these different things about, using. So vinegar is used in Chinese medicine as a thing. Definitely used as a it's not a condiment. It's like it's a condiment, but it's also used for processing herbs, right? Soaking things in vinegar, having herbs using vinegar to take herbs down, this kind of stuff. It's used in that way. But whether you just have it by itself, I'm not sure. Not too sure about that. As in you can, but I'm not sure whether what kind of evidence there is or, use indications there are for that. Cool. All right. So we've got this other question here from Angie. Welcome to the channel. I'm glad you found it. I hope that you do get a bit of benefit out of this channel, and you feel free to ask your questions. Let's put this on here. All right, so Angie says, thanks for your videos. I just found your channel today. I've been diagnosed with adenomyosis, uterine fibroids, and an ovarian cyst. I'm learning that I likely have cool dampness. So, all those things are like an accumulation of yin without enough yang to transform it. That's one of the ways we could explain masses and accumulations. So, like cysts and fibroids, like there's dense tissue that shouldn't be there, that's growing, that's taking up space, and it's a lack of yang, right? So it is a kind of a dampness in a way, because if what is dampness, it's a yin substance, it's an accumulation of yin, and basically if we have enough yang function, we wouldn't be able to accumulate these things. Your body would detect it and go, oh, that shouldn't be there. And it would notice that and it would get rid of it before it becomes something else. And it's the same idea. I'm not saying you have cancer or anything like that, but like it's the same concept of how these things accumulate. Like there's an accumulation of tissue and that shouldn't be there. That really has no functional purpose there, except for, it's causing you a problem. So this is kind of the idea of how those things can be seen in Chinese medicine. So essentially what we need to do is bring much more yang into that uterus, bring more yang into that picture. Now that's easier said than done. These are complicated scenarios, and there can be a lot of symptoms, that go along with that as well. There's often blood stasis as a pattern, right? Blood stagnation, especially if there's any kind of pain there. And doesn't have to necessarily have the pain, but just the fact that it's been there for so long, it's probably progressed past dampness. because there's, it's accumulated to the point where now you've, depends on what the size of those things are, but usually by the time these things are detected, there's, there's more going on. It's been going on for quite a while. It's not just like it just happened. So blood moving herbs and a blood moving kind of diet approach with all that stuff we said before about keeping the earth element as strong as possible is really important, right? And flavors have there's two yang flavors, sweet and pungent, right? And so that pungent flavor really becomes really important for this sort of stuff, because that's what is like a kapow. It kind of moves that energy, rather than it just being like, formulas that don't have any pungent in them, that are just tonifying. That's where they kind of lose effectiveness in comparison to when you look at a lot of classical herbal formulas that use pungent herbs along with the blood moving herbs or the blood tonifying herbs, right? So I hope that you're able to get help. You probably, this is something you would want to see a practitioner for. Moxibustion could be really useful for you, like it's something that you could possibly get a practitioner to teach you how to do, and you could do that every day or every second day. So with these sort of things, you need to do it kind of regularly. You could, I had them here because I was teaching this in my class last night. I've moved them. Little Moxa box, and get trained on how to use Moxa. Here's a Moxa stick right here. And, these are things that you can use on yourself if you're trained how to use it. So I'm not suggesting you use that unless you go to a practitioner and ask them to teach you how to use it properly. If you can do that, that would be good. Or just have the treatments from a practitioner. So that's what acupuncture can do for this sort of thing. You really need to see someone who can do Moxa alongside of it. But acupuncture itself is going to help get more blood flow to that uterus and potentially help those things to break up. But for some people, they go down the road of having surgical options, which will significantly get rid of the tissue that's there now, and then you can use acupuncture or herbs to prevent it returning in such a quick fashion. Because with these sort of things, it generally wants to return. Like, you have a surgery and get rid of it, and it can then, it can want to, like, that's the nature of these things, is they will tend to return, right? And also, like, most of what Chinese medicine would say is a healthy diet for the earth element is an anti-inflammatory kind of diet, right? So there's an aspect with the adenomyosis that there's inflammation there, and that would be probably leading you to have, significant debilitation and pain, and that's horrible, and I'm sorry for that. Like, that's not great. So so that is that question. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Are there any other questions or a follow-up to that one, perhaps, if needed? Then I will close off for today, I think. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm gonna definitely be doing these live streams every Monday, so feel free to keep coming back. This is great that people are getting the notifications, obviously, that we're doing this. My plan was to put a lot more videos out this year, but that has not happened. I've put like less than I did last year so far. But I've some other stuff has happened that I wasn't expecting to happen. So you just have to deal with what you've got to deal with. And just a lot of changes going on. So I'm committed to helping you doing this channel as best as I can. And I really enjoy doing the live streams. I think they're good, especially when we get some good questions. That's lovely. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for the super chats. And we might leave it at that for today. And happy days. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week. If people are watching this after the fact and they think, oh, no, I missed it, you can always put your question in the comments. That's totally fine, and I'll answer it next week. Okay? So, good. Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good week.